Hello and welcome. My name is Margit Bantowsky. I'm a transformative life coach and also a Trillium Awakening teacher. And Trillium Awakening is a spiritual path that integrates consciousness, embodiment, and mutuality or interrelatedness. And today, the topic is the body of love, awakened embodiment in action. So I would like to begin by reading a poem. And this is a poem by Fred Lamotte in a book called The Fire of Darkness. He does not title the poems in here, so there's no title to this one. And I have a little bit of a cough, so pardon my coughing and my cough lozenge, but we're going forward anyway. Please blunder. Make mistakes. In your lattice work of fractures, you look more whole and beautiful. A trellis cracks. A trellis of cracks on the mirror gives intricate wings to your reflection. One appears as many there because we dare to stumble and drop the crystal trinkets of ourselves. Surely, love grows vines on the arbor of your shattering, and you make burgundy of sorrow. That is why you listen to the song of those who have been crushed. That is why you listen to the song of those who have been crushed. The secret is to soften your gaze until the splay of your fault lines takes the shape of a dahlia. How falling becomes you when you have been torn beyond wholeness. The breath that was too faint to take comes home to heal you. That poem really resonated for me because of the idea of falling and falling in love, body of love. And there's something about that falling and the shattering of the crystalline trinkets of ourselves that I feel is a really important part of what it takes to be a body that's taking action, that's sourced in love. And, being love in action is not a new idea. It's a spiritual concept that we've heard all over the place. And it can be a concept that's really idealized. And what I want to do today is to help make it real. What does it really mean? And what does it really take to embody love in action? So in this brief presentation, I will make a couple places where I invite you to do some journaling. One of my graduate school professors used to say something like, inquiry before explanation, or exploration before explanation. So I'm going to ask you to journal a little bit right now on what does it mean to you to embody love. So embodying love, awakened embodiment in action. Love in action, embodied love in action. What does that mean to you? And if you're watching this as a recording, you might want to push pause here and give yourself some time to answer this question. Taking a moment to finish your thought, your sentence. And then I have a second question for you. This next question is, what gets in your way of embodying love? What gets in your way of embodying love in action? Again, if you're watching this as a video, go ahead and push pause to give yourself some time to reflect on that question. What gets in the way of embodying love in action for you? Okay, take a moment to finish your journaling. And I'm going to explore a little bit about what gets in the way of embodying and expressing love in action. And I'm sure some of what I have to say overlaps with what you came up with on your own. The way I see it is one of the main things that gets in the way of my ability to express love is conditioning. So there are places in me where my access to empathy has been either dampened or shut off. For example, when I was younger, my parents divorced and my father basically disappeared. They completely separated. And so there's something about loss that was, it was traumatic for me to just suddenly have zero access to my father. And to this day, there's a way in which that I feel slightly numb towards loss, towards absence. If someone's gone, I might not notice as soon as what would be considered normal. So that's just one example. But there's lots of layers of conditioning, not just my personal history, but cultural shadow as well, cultural conditioning. So, for example, personal story, my grandfather was a Nazi supporter. He was German. I was born in Germany. So in his system, in his body, in his mindset, was some way of being dissociated from empathy that made him align with the idea of white supremacy and the idea that it was okay and appropriate to collect and enslave and kill Jewish people. So some part of his neurology was shut down. And research has shown that the traumas that we experience in our lifetime affect our DNA. It affects the DNA in sperm. It affects the DNA in mothers, females. So that trauma not only is transmitted psychologically, but biologically in our bodies, in our culture. So some of that dissociation lives in me. And even beyond personal, cultural, there's a tremendous amount of archaeological evidence showing that in old Europe, the early civilizations, not just hunter-gatherers, but civilizations, permanent towns with agriculture, who were goddess-worshipping cultures, were egalitarian, were basically, non-violent. There was no weaponry, no fortifications, no barriers. They weren't built on high mountains to protect themselves. They were built in low valleys with abundance. And over time, we're still figuring out how that happened. It shifted from a partnership society, that's a name given by Riane Eisler, one of the people who's written about this, to what's called a dominator society, where violence, the ability to take life, was what was considered powerful, as opposed to the ability to give and nurture life, the more feminine source of power, was devalued and ultimately kind of pushed away. So 5,000 years, we have been in what's called dominator societies, male hierarchical societies, where the feminine has been devalued. The capacity that all of us have, men and women have, to nurture, to care for, to attend, to protect, and also relationship, to be related. So in all of our bodies, we carry the impact of that dissociation, the separation. The feminine was also the earth. The feminine was the body, the messiness of the body. So for 5,000 years, there's been this pretty dissociative path. You can also see it as a necessary individuation process, but it came at a cost. And now we're in the process of coming back to our hearts, coming back to our bodies, coming back to compassion and relatedness, coming back into intimacy with the earth, intimacy with our physicality, back into relationship with one another, mutuality. So this is a big part of the Trillium Awakening path. It's not just waking up to the unified field where we're all one, but we're waking down into the body, into the messiness of the human world, and into mutuality, into relatedness. So how do we do this? How do we practice this beautiful invitation to be in relationship and reclaim our natural capacity for compassion, for caring, for embodiment, for sensuality, for love? So I'm going to invite you to do a practice right now, and it's a practice of listening. I'm going to share with you a story, and I'm going to begin telling the story from a headspace. And I want you to listen to this story from your head, okay? Just staying in that sort of upper headspace energetic. Just notice what it's like to listen to me speaking from a headspace and what it's like for you to listen from a headspace, okay? Ready? So, when I was little, I really liked being outside, and it was great and fun, and I liked bugs and insects and creatures, and I didn't mind getting dirty, and yeah, it was really fun. I had, backyard I could play in, and it was really great, and I enjoyed it. So notice what that was like to listen from your head when I spoke kind of from my head. Maybe you noticed that thoughts got going. You thought of your own memories of being outside, or you were analyzing or making a judgment or making some sort of notes about my story. So let's continue the story, but we'll come from a slightly deeper place. So I'm going to speak from my belly, so from deeper in my body, lower in my body. And I invite you to listen from your belly, deeper within your body, and just notice what you notice when we do that. So I remember our backyard was kind of messy when we first moved in, and there was a sort of a thick layer of grass and vetch, and my brother and I would we were little kids, and we would build kind of tunnels in it and little nests in it. And, sometimes just lie there in the sun in these nests surrounded by, we pretended we were invisible. And just felt the sun and the smell of the grass and the plants and enjoying each other. Okay, so how was that? What did you notice? What was different about how I spoke between belly talk versus head talk? And what do you notice in your experience of listening? Difference between listening from your head and listening from your belly. Okay, we're going to do one more, even deeper. And I call this whole being listening. So in order to prime the pump for that, I'm going to invite you just for a moment. I'm going to guide you to this place before I start speaking. So go ahead and close your eyes. And take some breaths and drop deeply into your body. Not just observing your body, but inhabiting it, being it on the inside. Letting the chair or couch or bed or whatever you're sitting on support you. And giving your whole weight up to that support. Noticing all the sensations of your body, the texture, the temperature, heartbeat. Now softening your awareness, your gaze, your attention so it gets wider and softer. And notice the space around you. Noticing the space around you without leaving your body, so staying in your body, including awareness of your body, but being your body, and also including awareness of the space around you, the space in the room. And without leaving your body, softening your attention even wider and more subtly to include the space of the house, the town, the world, the universe. In other words, staying within the body, but softening your attention so it includes every possible perception, from the gross to the most subtle and beyond, to even just the stillness or silence that's permeating everything. So from that place, now listen to my story. And I'll speak from that place as I share the story. So I remember being in those nests in the vetch in the grass. I remember how alive I felt and comfortable I felt. And how much I enjoyed and loved my brother. And how time stopped. We weren't thinking about time. We were just noticing and maybe creating another burrow. Maybe discovering the blue-bellied lizards that are hiding in there too. And as I share that story, I notice how much I miss my brother, how deeply I love him, and how much I miss him. And how blessed we were to be able to play outside. Okay, so notice how that was different. How the quality of my speaking was different. And the quality of your listening was different. So this is one of the great gifts of whole being realization, is that we can drop into this really deeply embodied, yet paradoxically, deeply spacious place. And what that gives us is the capacity to be porous to one another. Just notice the difference in your porosity with respect to my story. The difference from listening from the head to listening from the whole being. And this capacity allows us to be penetrated by the other person, even when it's hard to hear. So I'm making this recording on June 13th, 2020, heightened awareness of police brutality against Black bodies, Black people. And what does it take to allow ourselves to be permeated by the news of the world around us? We don't just awaken into ourselves, we awaken into a world. So this capacity of whole being listening affords the opportunity to be impacted and transformed by that impact. So we have a word for that. It's called green lighting, saying yes to the impact. So going back to that poem that I read, yes to letting the crystalline trinkets of ourselves shatter on the ground, right? The crystalline trinkets are self-construct, you know. So around racism, for example, I want to believe that I'm pure and clean and good and crystalline. But when I watch the video of George Floyd being murdered by the police, I have to let that be shattered and let myself be penetrated and green light, make room for my reaction, right? So bearing the unbearable, that's the gift of whole being realization. We integrate old trauma in our bodies, personal trauma, you know, how it was unbearable for me as a little one to have my father disappear. I couldn't handle it at the time, but now I can. So we integrate that shadow, the personal shadow, the shattering of the heart that my 5-year-old self couldn't bear. And as we grow up and mature and awaken to social realities, we green light our heart shattering open, and we practice being willing to bear what is unbearable, what's unbearably true about our society, what's unbearably true about our participation in it. And what I'm finding is that shattering open, being willing, like really leaning into that shattering process, the shattering around the horror, the shattering around the shame and the complicit, you know, my participation in causing harm. What's happening in my own awakening process is sort of this emptying quality and a willingness, like there's this recognition, take me, I'm here to be of service. I'm willing to be an empty vessel of divine will. Let me know how you want to use me in the service of serving life, of nourishing life, of attending life, this way that we used to know how to do. That was our nature, to nourish and support life's flourishing. So what does it mean to be an empty vessel of divine will, to be willing to be a chalice of love, to have our ego shattered enough that we actually can listen to the call? So for example, in being shattered open by the George Floyd videos, and all the other people who have been murdered by the police, I had to listen. What does my body say? What's the call? You know, so I've been called to offer some classes and support my white allies, my friends, in their awakening process to social dimensions of reality. I don't want to do it. I hear the call and there's part of me that's like, no, I really just want to work in my garden and I want all this stuff to go away, right? So that's my final question to you right now. I invite you to take a moment, dropping deeply back into your bodies, well, your body, dropping deeply into the spaciousness, whole being, like dropping into your whole beingness. Maybe asking, what is being called of me right now? What is being called of me? So I'm going to give you a few minutes just to journal around that. And then I have a closing poem for us. Let your body answer. Don't have the mind be the source of the answer. It's not about should. If you're an empty vessel of divine will, empty vessel of love, wanting to move through you, what are you being called to do in this moment? It could be little, small, whatever. What are some ways that love might want to pour through you into the world? No right answer, just noticing the impulses, your impulses, belonging to you. And remember, it may not look like a very big overt action. You know, there are seasons to activism. Maybe your action right now, most loving act, is to nourish your capacity to be in mutuality. Nourishing your capacity to actually even just be here in this world right now. And this will be a practice of listening that you'll take with you. Listening for the call. Listening for the movement of divine will in your being. In Trillium, we call it the prompts of being. How the web of life itself wants to move through you as you. And over time, that discernment between the prompts of being from a deep place as opposed to a should. It loves the driver, not fear being the driver. So that's a contemplation. This question is one that hopefully we'll be living every day for the rest of our lives. How does love want to move through me in this moment, next week, etc.? So I'm going to close with a journal entry that I wrote this morning in relation to this topic. And I used a line. I use a deep creative writing process developed by my friend Joanne Lee, who is also a Trillium teacher. It's called the Create writing process. And in that process, you take a first sentence from a poem and then unfold from there. So this first line comes from the Fred Lamott poem I read to you at the beginning. Dare to stumble and drop the crystal trinkets. Dare to sacrifice your preciousness and purity, shaped by impossible ideals. Fall down, all the way down from your lofty heights into the brown river, thousands of feet below your tiny perch. Into that river which has worn through layers and layers of hardened history. Drop into that strong, relentless, unstoppable flow, determined to unite with the ocean, as far away and impossible as it might seem. Bend around oxbows, double back, meander. Nothing is linear, not even time. All there is river, wind, and earth. Take time to explore the side canyons of tributaries, lush, curved, secret places, home of cottonwood, willow, and canyon wren. Let the simplicity and the beauty bring you back to your senses. Let the steady song of the river fill your bones until it becomes your own heartbeat, the wellspring of your every action, your own blood. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.